Hey folks, this is Vince with Green Joe Coffee, and today we're covering a step-by-step checklist for a mobile coffee cart. Now this is a long video and I apologize for it, so I will put some timestamps in the bottom so you can jump ahead as needed. Proper introductions, my name is Vincent, I own Green Joe Coffee School. We help people start mobile coffee businesses, carts, trucks, and trailers. Been doing it for years, helped hundreds of people. And this video, what I want to do is kind of break down the steps that you need to do in order to launch a mobile coffee business. So let's start off with step number one, which is building a solid business plan. Now, when I first got into to coffee, I didn't take business plans very seriously. I looked at them more as like a financing option. Like, oh, okay, if I'm going to finance, then I need to go in there and get my business plan taken care of. But as I've continued to learn over the years, I've really depended on these things to really help me, and they've proven their worth. So for me, there's usually four main things I like to look at when it comes to building a proper business plan: cost of goods, the monthly expenses, startup cost, and profit projection. So kind of break each one of those down. So cost of goods is how much it costs to produce your cup of coffee. And so whether or not you're going to be selling by the hour, by the cup, you need to know kind of what your bottom line is on what it's charging you. If you are delegating this out, you're going to want to add your labor charges into your cost of goods. If it is just you working, it's kind of up to you on whether or not you want to do that. I didn't do that for the first couple of years. At this point in my career, I do add in my labor charges, but in the beginning I didn't. But what we're looking at is things like your cups, your lids, your cost of coffee per pound, where you get your milk, those type of things, anything that leads to the actual cup itself. And then from there, monthly expenses. So what am I going to be spending on a reoccurring basis? This is like your commissaries, your POS system, the gasoline for a generator if you're going to be setting up with a generator, all those monthly expenses that you have to pay. The next is startup cost. Startup cost, now this is where it's going to get tricky, because a lot of times you'll hear people talk about target market and target audience. And with startup costs, this is really where you're going to need to know that. So in coffee and coffee carting, there's a couple different ways you can make money. So the first is a stationary setup, and that's where you would set up Monday through Friday, like at a bookstore or in a hotel lobby or anything like that. The second is going to be things like catering. That's where you do things like weddings and business events. The third is special events like, festivals, 5Ks. The last one, which isn't popular in coffee carting, but we see a lot of it in coffee trucking, and I'll mention it anyways because some of you will eventually graduate to coffee trucking, is routes. And that's where you start off at a daycare and then head over to a blah, blah, blah. There's ways to do routes and catering together. There's hybrids, so you can kind of stack catering events, but that gets a little bit more complicated. Why this is important is because your target audience often dictates the equipment that you need. So if I'm going to be doing, say for example, a festival, right? Then festivals are very high volume, and I'm going to be looking at putting out a lot of product in a little amount of time. Versus if I'm doing things like a wedding, then I have 4 or 5 hours to get everyone, saturated with caffeine. So I got plenty of time. What I need is something that's going to fit into the venue and look really cute. So, whatever kind of business you want to set up, that's going to ultimately dictate that equipment, which will only ultimately dictate your startup costs. So kind of looking at, okay, when and where do I want to work? Where do I feel I'm going to make the most bang for my buck? How much do I value my time on certain things? So you got to kind of look at that and make sure it fits to your lifestyle. And, if you're being a solo entrepreneur right now. Anyways, so once all those things are calculated, then I can really start looking at my profit projection. So, if I'm doing festivals, I'll look at all the festivals in a 300-mile radius, and based upon their population, I can start calculating how much money I can make at these festivals. I think a big part of this that a lot of people don't talk about is how much money you need to make. And part of that is budgeting. So just, I've been working with this for years, and I've helped a lot of people start their businesses. And one of the trends that I've seen is that people will want to get into a side job so they can make more money. Makes sense, And when we calculate, well, how much money do you need? Sometimes I'll get these like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, how much money are you living off of? And again, I don't know. I'm like, okay, well, if you're not budgeting your income, then, adding adding, if you got a hole in your bucket, adding more water isn't going to fix it. You got to find out where your money's going, So part of this whole thing is budgeting your income, So I'll give you an example for us. We're a family of four, and currently we live off of 70 grand a year. That's what we're living off of. It used to be a little bit less pre-pandemic, but post-pandemic everything kind of moved up. So at 70 grand a year, we can take our family vacations, and we go out to eat once a week, and we have our grocery bills figured out and how much our car costs and all that stuff. So that's how much I would need to make. So in order for me to live comfortably, I'm going to need to see about 100 grand a year off of the coffee business. So those are things I think it's really important for people to kind of calculate, knowing how much money you need, and that way you can tell if this business is going to be viable for you. So anyways, that's number one. Gosh, that kind of took a while to go through, and sorry about that, but I think this stuff's important. Number two is registering and setting up your business. So this is where you would get like an LLC, federal EIN, your state or local business license. What these are, so each one of these, the best way I can explain these are, each one of these licenses is basically like a social security number for your business for that specific municipality, so that they have kind of a paper trail on, to track you down to get you to pay your taxes. So with the FEIN number, the federal employee identification number, that's going to be for the feds. So it'll be your federal taxes. Then you have your state tax. For us, it's a CRS number. Then you have your local business, your local city and county. So when you're opening up your business, you got to open up in all those. You start an account with all those different municipalities or those institutions, so that you have some type of kind of paper trail leading back to you on what you owe. And so none of that has anything to do with the health department. So typically you got to go through and get all those first before you can even apply for a health permit, because no matter what your business is, everyone needs to have those type of permits or licensing first. So so open up all your business accounts. This includes getting a bank account open, setting up your bookkeeping and how you're going to do your bookkeeping, your domain names, your social media handles, your logos. So kind of getting all the logistics set up of starting a business. That's number two. Number three is contacting your health department. And so the first initial contact to your health department is usually, I recommend getting that done. Gosh, we should probably put that, honestly, that should go into number one, because I think it's really important to know what you're getting into right away before you open everything up. So I'm going to switch that on you. I'm going to say number one is business plan. Number two is health department. Number three is your business stuff. The reason why I'm bumping health department ahead is because we've had horror stories where we've submitted all the proper procedures, all the proper floor plans, only to find out 3-4 months into this that the health department simply just doesn't want a coffee cart in their county. And it has nothing to do with anything that we were able to foresee. It's just someone had a hair up their butt, and that's what they decided they didn't want. So I think contacting the health department is truly one of the most important things. Usually when you contact a health department, you'll write them a letter of intent. We have sample letter intents in our ebook, but with a letter of intent, you're going to be asking things like, hey, can I have an application? And can you point me to the local regulations that dictate coffee businesses, mobile coffee businesses? And they'll send you, either cart paperwork or truck or trailer paperwork if they don't have the cart paperwork, and you kind of start going from there. Most health departments are going to want to see some type of floor plan. That's going to be things like, what your cart looks like from the outside. And this stuff you don't have to do right away. But, once you decide that this is something that you want to get into, then usually floor plans are up there. This is where I'm going to shamelessly drop my MCA, my mobile coffee accelerator, because we have floor plans in there. So, you can spend weeks working on it, or you can just go buy the MCA and save yourself all the headache. But with the floor plans, usually what they'll want to see spec sheets on your equipment. They'll want to see plumbing diagrams, your hot, cold, and gray. They'll want to see your electrical diagrams. They'll want to see the equipment layout. And then sometimes they'll ask for things like, the procedures to make a drink, the order of operations, or the SOP, standard procedures, operating procedures for making a drink sometimes. But yeah, so that's typically what they'll look for. With the equipment spec sheet, and this is number 4 on my list, with the equipment spec sheet, you're going to want to put every piece of equipment. So you'll include the model, the manufacturer, the dimensions, the certifications that they have, any power or plumbing requirements that it has, put all that in there. And just a side note, most of the time they're going to require commercial equipment. Residential equipment usually doesn't pass on this stuff. They'll also need a food contact surface and finishes list. So that's number 5. That's going to be all the finishing material for things like your serving counter. What's it made out of? They want to make sure that it's not porous, that it's not going to, liquids won't seep into it and start molding is basically what they're looking for. So no exposed wood, and that it meets the code requirements. All right, number 6 is the commissary agreement. Commissaries are, usually you have to have one. I'd say 9 out of 10 people, probably a little more than that, but 9 out of 10 people, 9.5 out of 10 people need a commissary. Commissaries are refuel depots where you have to basically drop off your gray water, fill up your fresh water, clean your dishes, refrigerate your food if you're going to maintain that, and somewhere to keep your dry goods. Most of the time, health departments don't allow carts to be held at your house, so that's a big eye opener for folks getting into this business, because they thought, well, I'll just stick it in my garage. But usually garages aren't, they don't go through a health inspection, so health inspectors rarely will allow you to kind of set that up there. So you got to go out and find a commissary. You got to make an agreement with them and find out how much it's going to cost you. That type of stuff's in the ebook. I have a whole video on how to find a commissary and maybe even how to get one for free. So all right, so number 7 is location strategy. This is where you want to research your local regulations on where you can operate your cart legally. I remember I had a person that I was working with in one of the boroughs of New York. They could not operate on a sidewalk, but they were allowed to operate from within a business. So he set up inside a bookstore. I thought it was a genius thing to do. But just kind of understanding the zoning laws on where and when these things are allowed to operate. Sometimes they'll close off when you can operate a coffee cart. All right, so this is a good time to look at farmers markets, festivals, and any other predictable event that you can set up at. Number 8 is a cart build out. I'm going to also, again, shamelessly drop MCA into this, because where I show people how to build carts, whether or not you want to do a collapsible cart or if you want to do a standalone. That's all in the Mobile Coffee Accelerator. Also in the Mobile Coffee Accelerator, we get a discount at Simple Carts. So if you're interested in Simple Carts, we'll get one there. But yeah, purchasing the cart itself or the framework for the cart, getting things like your tanks and your sinks and your water supplies and your heaters, and then getting the cart equipped. If you're building your cart from the ground up, you'll have to make sure it's up to code. So that's number 8 is the cart build out. Number 9 is sourcing your supplies. So this is where often you'll look for both your coffee and your supplies. I cover all the supplies both in the Mobile Coffee Accelerator as well as the ebook, because it's part of your cost of goods. But you'll want to start doing like your cuppings, and with coffee cuppings, the roasters will usually send you a pound, which is fine. It's good enough to kind of taste their coffee. Half of it I'll do pour over, the other half I'll do a cold brew with. But if it passes that test, then I usually need to order more to actually dial in my machine on it and make sure that this is something that I want for the cart. So sourcing your supplies, sourcing your coffee, doing your cuppings, and there's some different videos on how to source coffee and stuff. So staffing and pricing. So you'll come up with, here's where you want to start looking at your packages. Are you going to sell it by the hour, or are you going to sell by the cup? So you start doing your pricing guides. Also, if you're going to be doing delegating right out the get-go, you'll want to start looking for some help when you're launching. I usually say once you get your equipment in and your cups and your coffee in, it's a good time to start building out your menu. And once you have your menu built out, that's when I would usually say let's do a test run with family and friends. It's a great photo opportunity as well. So getting a photographer down there, seeing if you can have any of your friends dress up in their wedding dress, if they still fit the tux. I don't know if I still fit my tux, but getting dressed up so that you can do a photo op. That way you can market that to weddings specifically, or if you're going to be doing businesses or open house real estate, whatever the case is, this is your opportunity to pull family and friends in and kind of take some photos for your first line of marketing. So there is the 11 steps on how to launch a mobile coffee cart. I hope this helps. My name is Vincent with Green Joe Coffee School. We have classes, courses, and ebooks. Come check us out. All right, thanks for tuning in.